Motorsport TV Live, brought to you by Motorsport Tickets, the dedicated motorsport experiences provider.
Hello and welcome to Motorsport TV Live. I'm Bryn Lucas. Coming up today, we'll start our look ahead at the 2022 Formula One season, which will introduce a new era of car. We'll have insight from Autosport.com's F1 reporter Luke Smith, and we'll take a closer look at the new circuit that will make up part of a record 23 race calendar. That's all coming up right here on Motorsport TV Live. Well, the dust may have only just settled on a historic F1 season that has seen a new Drivers' Champion crowned in Max Verstappen, but already talk has turned to what next season may have in store for us. A new car, driver changes, a bumper 23 race calendar, and of course, we're sure to see more from the intense Mercedes and Red Bull rivalry. Plenty to discuss and speculate over, and I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Autosport's F1 reporter Luke Smith to go through what promises to be an exciting season. So Luke, thank you very much for joining me. Rivalries reignited in whole new machinery. What can you tell us about the new look car?
Well, yeah, it's really the start of a new technical era for Formula One. For a number of years, they've been chasing this technical revolution. It was due to arrive in 2021, but was then delayed because of the COVID pandemic to 2022. The cars, there's a total reworking of the aerodynamic design of them. Basically means that the cars will hopefully be much easier to follow each other. The dirty air won't be as damaging to the drivers behind. It'll mean that they're able to push more in races. We're expecting it to be a little bit slower compared to the final iteration of these cars in 2021, but I think it's exceeded already all expectations of just how much time there would be made up. I think that the teams are going to be a lot closer than expected to the pace that we saw in 2021. So yeah, it's a real huge change for F1. New cars, new tyres as well. They're going from 13-inch tread to 18-inch tread, so that's a really big change. And yeah, it's just a huge year, I think, for F1 as everyone hits reset.
The cars do or will look extremely different to what we've been used to over the last few years. Designed to promote better racing, that's the kind of the headline, the top line they're saying. You mentioned about dirty air. That obviously impacts how close cars can get in that clean air. So currently around 3 car lengths back, 20 metres back, they reckon 35% of downforce is lost. And when they get to 1 car length behind, 47% of downforce is lost because of dirty air. They're looking to reduce that, it says, to 4% at 20 metres, which is incredible, and 18% at 10 metres. So what are you expecting to see from 2022? Much closer racing is the key, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think if the regulations work as they're expected to, then yeah, there would be much closer racing. I think that we're going to see, some big gaps to begin with in terms of how teams are performing. But the regulation rule set, it's so tight this year. There's not much freedom technically for the teams as there has been in previous times. So I think in the end, everyone's going to kind of converge in terms of like where their car design is at and how they're performing. And I think that we're going to see a quick rate of development through the season. And hopefully that means that, yeah, we do end up with this multi-team, multi-driver fight at the front of the pack. And we do get away from the kind of like 2-team max fight we've seen in sort of the past decade or so, I guess. So it's a really exciting time for F1. I think every team sees it as the chance to make a step forward. One team principal said to me that everyone thinks right now they can be world champion next year. He was from one of the Pat Mark teams. I don't know if that's quite true for him, but there's definitely that sense of anticipation. The next year presents a huge opportunity for teams to really tear up the script and make a big step forward.
Yeah, it's a real great unknown, isn't it? Which is very exciting from the outside looking in. You touched upon the wheel size, that it's going up to 18 inches. Now, that's going to have a bit of an impact because there'll be low-profile tyres, so the side walls are going to be a bit stronger. They're not going to move around as much. What's the thinking behind changing that wheel size?
It's been something that F1 has been looking at for a good 7-8 years now, and around the automotive industry, on the roads and other racing series like WEC, like Formula E, 18 inches is the standard. You don't see many championships running the 13-inch rims anymore. So F1 was always a bit of an outlier on that side of things. So Pirelli, it's been looking for some time to make this step from its point of view in terms of technology transfer, in terms of things it can learn from F1 to then put onto the road, 18 inches makes a lot more sense for them. But it is, as you say, going to have a big change, I think, on how the tyres perform and how they operate. I think that Pirelli, they said they want to make the tyres easier to warm up because they want to get rid of tyre blankets by 2024. In terms of performance, they want to make sure that drivers can push right the way throughout a stint. We don't have these tyre management races that we know that the drivers hate so much. And make it so that we have a variety of 1 and 2 stop strategies across races, but that both of them kind of end up with a similar finish time. So maybe see a bit of variation in terms of the perfect strategy. But yeah, all change for Pirelli next year.
Absolutely. Now, with each 4 corners of that car, there are also changes with what the tyres and the wheels are going to look like, because we have the return of wheel covers since, well, the last time we saw it was 2009.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, which is, again, something quite big for the teams to deal with. And I spoke with Pirelli boss Mario Isola in Abu Dhabi, and he was explaining to me how basically that wheel cover has such a big impact on the tyre balance and everything like that. So it's really been at the heart of the designs for the tyres. So yeah, that's a very, very big step forward. We saw a few teams trialling some wheel covers through the postseason test running when they could use the 2022 tyres. But it also speaks to some future technology that F1 could use as well. A photographer and I, we spotted in Abu Dhabi that McLaren did one single run, but there was an LED wheel cover on the rear of Lando Norris's car. And that can be used with lights for advertising, for marketing, for things like that. So could even show what position the driver is in or like what lap it is. So that's really exciting as well, sort of a sign of where F1's future technology could go. But the return of wheel covers, wheel guards as well over the top of the front tyres as well. So it's going to look quite different, I think, for maybe new fans who've only just got into the sport, say through Netflix, and they're only used to seeing what these cars look like. I think next year is going to maybe take them by surprise a little bit.
It's going to be so weird to see LEDs flashing away on wheels, isn't it? Displaying advertising and other information. It's quite exciting, though, as you say. And the winglets on the side there, trying to reduce wake. And that's a big story, isn't it? Because we talk about this downforce and dirty air, this big story about allowing cars to get closer to each other. A new front wing, a new rear wing, and the rear wing is completely different, sending the air upwards, not downwards.
Yeah, it's a really huge change. And again, like looking at some of the prototypes and sort of the mock-ups of what we think next year's cars will look like, it does look quite strange, definitely. And I think it's going to take a lot of people by surprise when they first do see it. But it is just a complete change in aerodynamic concept. So we've got the return of ground effect as well to these cars. So it's going to probably mean that the high downforce corners, they can take even quicker. But then the lower downforce corners, they struggle even more. So it's a bit of a give and take and trade-off. But it's a big change for F1. I think that all of the engineers, I mean, they thrive off these sort of challenges where they're told, here's a rule book, find every loophole you can, make the car as quick as you can. And I think that come the start of next season, I think it's going to be really exciting to see what everyone's come up with and just what the pecking order looks like between them all.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Now, one thing we can't see, the power unit is essentially staying the same, but biofuel, they're trying to increase the use of that one. Is that something that F1 is looking at beyond 2022 to try and increase that percentage of biofuel?
Yeah, massively. That's where I think F1 really sees the best place to hang its green credentials moving forward. We know that in the talks over the 2026 power unit, which is going to be the next sort of generational change, sustainable fuels are absolutely at the heart of that. That's what is getting the VW group with Porsche and Audi really, really interested in a possible F1 entry, because they do want to make it sustainable moving forward. So next year will be a step towards that. I believe they're using the E10 fuel next season, but it'll build as they move forward, and they do want to get to a point where they are using fully sustainable fuel. It's important for manufacturers, but it's also important for fans as well. In the F1 Nielsen and Motorsport Network survey earlier this year, fans showed a really strong interest and really strong, keenness to see sustainable fuels be used in F1 in the future. And I think they really see that as being the place that F1 can make itself more environmentally friendly and make big steps forward. So, it's the start, I think, of something that's going to be very exciting, very important to F1's future.
Yeah, I think Formula One really doesn't want to let go of the ice, do they? They want to keep that internal combustion engine going for as long as they can. And let's hope they can do something and keep biofuels going for the future anyway, so we can hear these wonderful engines go around a track. Let's have a look at the movers and the shakers then when it comes to driver changes. There's always a big story around driver changing, isn't there? And I think it all started really with Kimi Räikkönen saying that he was going to be leaving the sport. What a loss is it for Formula One?
It is a big loss, yeah. I mean, Kimi Räikkönen, he's such an incredible character. He really, really is. And he's given so much to F1. Obviously, in the sort of 2000s, I think we saw him at the absolute peak of performance, winning that World Championship in 2007 with Ferrari. And yeah, I think the character he is, I mean, yeah, everyone knows what Kimi is like. And there was a video going around this week of Kimi wrote on a card his predictions for the season and what the race would be, what the best race would be back in Bahrain. And he put on it that Abu Dhabi would be the best race because it'll be my last race in F1. So he knew as far back as then, he was that confident that I'm going to call it quits after this year. And yeah, I think that he ultimately is very happy with the decision. I had a really fascinating interview with him in Abu Dhabi that is going to be going on Autosport over the winter. And he made very clear that to him, there's bigger things to life than F1, that look, he's enjoyed it here, but his priority is his family. It's about having a normal life. That's what he wants to go and get. And I think that's really what he's after. So yeah, I think it's a big loss for F1, but I think F1 is going to miss Kimi a lot more than Kimi will miss F1.
It's funny, isn't it, that we talk about Kimi Räikkönen's character and yet he comes across as so dry all the time. What's he like sort of personally on a one-to-one?
So truthfully, I'd never actually interviewed Kimi one-to-one until Abu Dhabi, which was quite something to have it as the final race of his career. And I finally get the chance to interview him one-to-one. And yeah, he didn't like sit down and sort of say like, oh, hello, like how you doing? Or anything like. He just sat down and we got into it. But then like he really opened up. He was laughing a lot. Like he was having a joke. He was quite sort of comfortable swearing. And yeah, and then afterwards he went off and the PR came over to him and he said, that's the first time in 3 years I've seen Kimi late for an engineering meeting because of an interview. And I thought, well, that means one of two things. Either like, oh, I did a really good job and he was having a great chat, or he saw me as the lesser of two evils and it was a better way to spend his time. But either way, no, he was, yeah, really fascinating chat. And I think that you talk to people who've worked with Kimi as well in the past, they paint such a different picture to the man that I think we see on TV. I think that, yeah, he's a really good guy. And I think that he's a family man. That's his focus now. And his priority will be, yeah, seeing his kids grow up and spending time with them, which, yeah, I think is really, really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. With him leaving Alfa Romeo and also with Giovinazzi also leaving as well to go off to Formula E, that left them with 2 seats to fill and they got a big name in Valtteri Bottas. Now he, I think, has had a tough time maybe at Mercedes being Lewis Hamilton's best ever teammate in Lewis Hamilton's own words. But what's it mean for Valtteri Bottas going off to Alfa to really, I suppose, be the #1 driver?
Well, that's exactly it. He now has the chance to be a team leader, to build the team around him. And he's got a multi-year contract as well in the bag, which is something he never had with Mercedes. So it really gives him a lot of stability moving forward. And I spoke to Fred Vasseur, Alfa Romeo's team principal. And he said that he thinks Bottas can step out of Hamilton's shadow by coming to Alfa, that ultimately he's going to have all this experience he's gained from being part of a world championship operation, from seeing just how Mercedes operates, and can turn that into something really, really good on track. And I think that, yeah, it's maybe he's not going to be turning Alfa into world championship winners or race winners or anything like that. But I think there's a real chance for Valtteri to put something really good together. And I think that it's a long-term project. It's something that he knows it's not going to be, I'm going to go from 2022 and win straight away or anything. But I think that for him, yeah, it's a good chance to write the next chapter of his career. I think it's very, very different, the vibe he'll have there. But I think it's very good for where he is right now. And I think that, as Fred said, it does give him the chance to really be the #1 now and lead that team forward in the future.
Yeah, he's really got to lead a very young guy through. Guanyu Zhou's coming into the championship, into Alfa Romeo. He won the F3 Asian Championship, came 3rd in F2 this year as well. So he's a great talent, as we know, but what's he going to need to do this season? And what perhaps can Valtteri Bottas do to help him in his development?
Well, I mean, Joe's had quite a good amount of test running. He's done a lot of private testing with Alpine as a member of its academy. And in Abu Dhabi in the postseason test, he did both days for Alfa. So he's already building up that experience. But I think for any rookie driver, we saw with Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, both graduating to F1 this year, there's always an adjustment period. And I think that it's important to try and have a teammate to lean on who can help you and sort of interact. And I think that that's going to be the big focus for Joe and Bottas moving forward. They need it to be that they can work together closely. Bottas said he's already shared a few texts with Joe and they're already sort of chatting a bit. They'll obviously have talked during postseason testing as well. So I think the early building blocks are there. I think that, yeah, first F1 season is always quite daunting. I think that particularly when you've got such a big regulation change as well, it's kind of like all change, and there's a lot to fight for. I think that's good that everyone's kind of reset, but also it means that the rate that you learn at will be so quick and so important. So yeah, I think for Joe, he's got the experience. He's done a lot in junior formulas. I think that it's a really good shot for him. And I think that if he can lean on Bottas to pick up some tips where possible, I think it'll put him in really good shape for his rookie season.
Yeah, it might also help Valtteri Bottas being, in charge, mentoring somebody else as well. Perhaps, who knows? We'll have to see how that one plays out. One man coming back is Albon. Now, his stint at Red Bull didn't go at all well, I think it's fair to say. But he's back in the championship, and I think he'll be chomping at the bit, won't he?
He will, yeah. I think Alex, he towards the end of his time with Red Bull, I think it was quite clear where things were going to go. The team did want to go in a different route and bring Sergio Perez in. But Albon remains such a key part of that team moving forward. He was in the simulator a lot. He was really helping out on race weekends and played such a big role in that title wins. So I think that he's been working away hard in the background, but nothing matches the matches racing. Like, you want to be back in a race seat, and I think with Williams, it was a team that is clearly on the up. They've got this new funding as well from Doralton. I think they're looking at next year as being a big chance for them to make a step forward. We saw the progress they could make through 2021 even. So it's a really exciting time, and I think that the team, it had so much power in the driver market. It could have gone for so many options, so many drivers, and yet it was Alex Albon they wanted to get in. So I think it's going to be a good place for him to land. I think that the team is very different in terms of its approach. That a Red Bull obviously had a very skittish car. It's very much tailored to Max Verstappen's driving style, which is quite difficult for a lot of drivers. We saw with Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Perez, even at points this year. So I think that Williams is a good place for him to go. I think it's a good chance for him to really reset and show some of the glimpses that we saw during his time at Red Bull on a more regular basis.
Yeah, it would be good to see Alex Albon out there performing really well, wouldn't it? Now, one man that we haven't touched upon, I think the biggest name really with the changes that happened in the driver lineups is George Russell moving from Williams to Mercedes to sit next to Lewis Hamilton. Now, that is a fascinating pairing. What's Lewis Hamilton going to see from George Russell? What's George Russell going to do? It's a big crystal ball you need to look into here.
It really is, yeah, and I think that that's probably going to be the biggest talking point of winter. And as we go into the start of the season, how quickly can George Russell get up to pace and take the fight to Lewis Hamilton? Because Lewis alongside Valtteri Bottas, he's had a very good teammate. Don't get me wrong, but he's not really been pushed on a regular basis. And I think that what Russell could come in and do is provide that kind of challenge. And it'll always take time to get up to speed with a new team and with a new teammate. But yeah, talking to people, like talking to Jost Capito, the Williams team principal, he said that he thinks George can do it from day one. He said, I see no problem at all for George. He's going to go in and he can immediately challenge Lewis, can immediately challenge for the title if Mercedes has the right car. So I think it's a big dynamic change at Mercedes. I think it's a big sign of where their future is going to be. I think that realistically, you'd expect George Russell to be at Mercedes beyond the end of Lewis Hamilton's time there. I think it's a really exciting story. A great chance for George as well after so many years with Williams, proving what he can do in a substandard car. Now he's finally got the chance to fight for race wins, poles, maybe even a championship on a regular basis.
How friendly do you think Lewis Hamilton's going to be to George Russell if quite early on he starts challenging? Because Lewis Hamilton wants to be challenged. We know that from the way he's performed over the years. Bottas didn't really give him the challenge, but we know that Rosberg did. And if you have George Russell coming in and he challenges and pushes Lewis Hamilton, that's a good thing. But if he starts beating Lewis Hamilton, what happens then?
Well, I mean, that's why I think we're all excited, anticipating. If that happens, wow, what a story that would be. I think it is. That's really going to be the big headache, I think, for Mercedes, that we saw in the Hamilton-Rosberg era, what having two alphas, two drivers going for the championship, fighting against each other can do. And Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton, they both said, look, it's a very different team now. We've learned from that chapter and what happened, and there wouldn't be any repeat of it. But obviously, it's all very well saying that. It's actually in practice, how does it actually go? So I think it's going to be really, really fascinating. I think that George, he'll go in there, he'll know that to begin with, look, he's probably not going to be maybe entirely up to speed. There will be little things he's got to learn. But the moment he finally gets comfortable and gets in his groove, he can really push Hamilton. I think it's going to be such an incredible dynamic between the two of them. I think that, it could leave Mercedes with maybe a few headaches here and there. Because we've seen through history that ultimately having two top drivers in a team, it can be very lucrative, but also it can lead to a lot of friction. I think Mercedes, though, I think the fact that they went through what they did with Rosberg, I think they can kind of set the rules early on and say, look, we're not going to go down that route again. This isn't going to happen. But again, that's easier said than done. So I think it's going to be one of these stories to watch in the early part of next season.
And we've got more races to watch them on. 23 races on the calendar. Starts on the 20th of March in Bahrain, goes all the way through to the 20th of November. Abu Dhabi. It's fascinating, and we have that 23rd race, Miami. What are we going to expect from this brand new circuit, I suppose, or street circuit layout?
It's a really exciting step for F1. Liberty always made clear it wanted to expand in these destination cities, they called them. And I think Miami is, really the hottest ticket in town. I think that's going to be such an exciting race next season. It's such a cool city. I think everyone's really excited to go there. And we saw with Austin just how much the American public has now really tapped into F1 and become so fascinated by the sport. So I think that going to Miami, it gives a chance to expand that further, have somewhere in sort of a major city and very easy to get to. And I think that's going to be really exciting. I think, the track layout, we've seen some sort of renders and plans of it going around the Hard Rock Stadium and everything. And again, that's really cool. So hopefully it delivers on track as well as off track. But I think that, if there's one race you ask anyone in F1, where do you want to go next season? I think Miami's probably not up there as number one.
Yeah, now I'm a huge F1 fan. You clearly are. I mean, you get to spend your time around the drivers, around the paddocks and things too. Is 23 races just one or two too many, do you think?
Personally, my opinion is yes. I think it is. I think that we're now at a point where drivers and teams are starting to feel the toll of that even more. And we are seeing more teams have to do staff rotation, things like that. But obviously that's not possible. I mean, take Lewis Hamilton's race engineer, for example. They can't chop and change. It's got to be the same race engineer every single race. And that goes for quite a few team roles across all the teams. So I think it's a lot to ask of F1 personnel. I think next year, the fact that the season finishes earlier as well to avoid clashing with the World Cup, I think that again, just sort of increases the pressure. It does mean we're finished a bit earlier before Christmas, but then there are concerns of does that open the door for them to next year say, well, you had no races in December last year, let's put another 2 in and get to 25 races. So it's a lot to ask of people in F1. The drivers feel the same way. They even say it's getting harder and harder for them in terms of the travel and everything. So it's a big commitment. I think that the more that teams can rotate staff, the better. I think it's very important. Even on a personal level, I'm not expecting to be all 23 races next season because it would be a lot to ask. So it's, I think that F1 moving forward, they do need to be sustainable. There's been suggestions of calendar rotation and things like that. But if we could get to a point where maybe a 20 race season is enough in terms of bringing in the financial support needed, plus enough action on TV for fans without over-egging it, without saturating that many races for fans, I think that would be a good balance.
Yeah, 23 races does seem like quite a lot, especially if you've got pets. Costs a lot of money to get someone to walk the fish, doesn't it? Look, testing starts at the end of Feb. I take it you'll be there. And what are you expecting to see from those cars out on track in Barcelona?
I'm quite curious. I think it might end up being similar to maybe 2017, which was the last big era revolution in F1. And I think you see the teams, maybe spending a little bit more time in the garage, maybe sort of understanding things. And I don't think it's going to be like this year's testing where everyone got out pretty much straight away. And it was 3 days, but that was actually way more time than they needed. They've got 6 days coming into 2022. And I think that's enough time for them. But it's going to be fascinating that if a team turns up and their car looks completely different to everyone else's, they're going to say, well, either we're onto something here or we've messed up in a major way. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see what everyone does. I think that's going to be the first true test of has the regulation change worked? Has it done what is expected? And then, hopefully we'll get to Bahrain and have a really close race to start Formula One's new technical era.
Well, look, we'll keep an eye on your reports. I'm sure we'll chat to you as well around that time. But thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you, Bryn. Cheers.
Well, there you go. That's all we got time for. Thanks very much there to Luke. I'm Bryn Lucas. Join us again here on Motorsport TV Live for more season reviews and roundups. See you soon.